I would, ask you to be a champion for the state, the advantages of being here. Make sure they know that what we can do in terms of our manufacturing fund, and we can provide support in terms of buying advanced equipment. We can provide support in terms of training people to use that advanced equipment. We can put in place a pipeline so you get the people you need. That's what I want. I want to double the size of manufacturing over the next 10 years. Want to help me?
A quick interruption to remind you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better. Hey, welcome to a very special episode of the Made in America podcast. For this episode, we have something pretty unique. There's only 50 of these in the entire country and only one for our state. I am so pleased to welcome Governor Ned Lamont. Governor, thank you so much for coming on today.
Good morning, Ari.
Well, listen, it's the Made in America podcast, and we always start off with the same two questions. What do you make, and why do you make it?
Hey, first of all, to all the manufacturers out there, really proud that you're in the state of Connecticut, or maybe even looking at the state of Connecticut. And a particular hello to Ari's grandparents. I understand, love to listen. What do I make? I'll say for the first 40 years of my life, I built telecommunication systems. We built systems to provide IT to college campuses across the country, worked as a small business, rolling out a niche business that we could do a lot better than the big cable operators and the other guys. And I think in my newest iteration as governor of the state of Connecticut, I do everything I can to make Connecticut a place where people want to raise a family, start a business, grow a business, and hire people.
Oh, that's fantastic. And we always love kind of the personal side. So I guess you got two different personal stories, but maybe we'll stick to the most current one, which is why governor? You were a successful businessman for sure in your own right, as you alluded to, and anyone who's read about it knows what you were able to achieve. It's very impressive. What made you decide to kind of give up the private sector and try to impact people's lives through government?
Connecticut was on its back foot. Just a few years ago, GE leaves, last one out, turn out the lights, people leaving the state, chronic fiscal, and it just didn't have to be. It's an amazing state with so much future ahead of us. So I just figured I'd done what I wanted to do in the private sector. I loved every moment of it. It learned a lot. It informs everything I do every day in this job. But now let's get this state moving again. And the way to do that is governor. I don't have the wiring to be a legislator. Governor's an executive, lets you get the job done. And I think we're making a difference. I think that businesses are now beginning to move back to the state. I know we've had tens of thousands of people moving into the state instead of out of the state. Young people, don't need everybody my age. I want more people your age. I want people your age because that's where the energy comes from, and that's how we get the next generation of jobs here.
Absolutely, and I want to get into that a little bit more, and it is a manufacturing podcast, so I do want to talk a little bit about kind of your views on manufacturing. Connecticut leading the nation in creating the first position for a chief manufacturing officer. Not only did we create that position, but I would say under your leadership, we were smart enough to hire a private sector manufacturing leader who knows the business, understands it in Colin Cooper. And I'm just curious from your perspective, why was it so important to have a chief manufacturing officer? And how do you see us leveraging that into the future?
Well, play to your strengths. I think that's something we've probably both learned in business a little bit. And, if I was in Texas, maybe a little more oil and gas, I'd be over there. Or if I was in California, I'd play with silicon. But we're the Silicon Valley of manufacturing. That's something that Connecticut is historically the best at. It starts because we have the best trained, most productive, most innovative workforce. I got to work every day to make sure we're ahead of the competition. We make the most sophisticated and complicated machines in the world, starting with submarines and choppers and jet engines, and then across the board. And when I took over, I just looked at the numbers. It was just extraordinary to me. There was a very low unemployment rate. This is back 3 years ago. But we had tons of jobs. I mean, thousands of jobs in advanced manufacturing that we couldn't fill. And I said, well, that's the job of government. I'm not here to hand out tons of incentives, but I am here to make sure that you have the talent you need. So that was focus number one. Colin Cooper, look, he comes out of manufacturing. He understands the language. He knew some of the smaller manufacturing, the needs they had in terms of people, the needs they had in terms of equipment, ways that he could talk that language as we go around to make sure they continue to grow and expand here. And don't forget Kelly Valeris. I mean, she's a workforce. She comes out of manufacturing, still chairman of a manufacturing company, and she knows better than anybody the skill sets she and Colin have determined our manufacturers need so that they can keep growing.
Yeah, listen, on behalf of manufacturers, it's been awesome to see government kind of wake up to the opportunity that's there in the manufacturing community and see that support. And maybe on that sort of topic, a number of the leaders in your administration, not just Colin, David Lehman, Josh Gabal, Kelly Valeris you talked about, all come out of the private sector. What's driven you so much to pull people out of the private sector into government?
Again, when I looked at the state, you had the public sector and the private sector, and the two ways did not meet, right? I mean, I'm down in Fairfield County, the public sector, a bunch of overpaid state employees leaning on a mop waiting for their pension. That was sort of the image. And by the way, stop taxing us. And, up here or the greater Hartford area, a lot of whiz-bang hedge fund managers, they don't care a hoot about the public good. So we had an incredible disconnect in the state, and I think it cost us badly. So I've tried very hard across the board. I've got great public, I've got great advocates, and I got great private sector managers, in our government. I got advanced CT. I say that to anybody who's maybe listening. The best people who can sell the state are not guys like me. I'm a homer. You already got me. But, if it's in pharma, if it's in manufacturing, it's something else, we've got folks in our advanced CT board. So when that next company's thinking about it, I say, why don't you talk to Jim Lurie over at Stanley Black & Decker? He'll tell you what it's like to work in Connecticut.
Yeah, and it's awesome to have kind of those people on the team, right, to help tell that story. And certainly I'm a big believer in the stronger together, right? We're not going to win government and private sector going it alone against each other. We gotta work together. So I'm really appreciative of your leadership there. And something that you probably heard, for those that don't know, you were recently at OK Industries with Jason Howie and that team. Jason Howie, one of our early podcast guests, and this was pre-pandemic. And he said his top 3 priorities for OK Industries were workforce, and workforce. Clearly, in the pandemic, that gave us a little bit of break, but now we're back again to workforce. Manufacturers looking everywhere to fill these jobs, high-paying jobs, great careers with great opportunity. Can you talk a little bit about your embracing of sort of creating the pipeline that we need to fill those jobs so they get filled here in Connecticut, not somewhere else?
So 3 years ago, when we had a very low unemployment rate, we still had tons of highly skilled jobs we couldn't fill because we weren't training people for them. And I just thought it was insane that everybody had to get a 4-year degree here or a 2-year degree at community college, when in many cases a 12, 16-week certificate program would line you up for that $75,000 a year job, and you can graduate with a no debt and get going. So we've rolled that out across all of our community colleges right now. By the way, working hopefully with your listeners. If you haven't gotten feedback from us, reach out to Kelly and our team. Tell us the skill sets you need. Tell us maybe you've got a retired person who can help us do the training. That's number 1, 2, and 3 where I work for us. Today, I got to tell you though, Ari, workforce is a little bit different. I now have tens of thousands of unskilled jobs we're having a hard time filling. I mean, I've got, and that's COVID related. I used to think, oh my God, everybody were hit so hard by COVID until we have a very low infection rate, very high vaccination, people won't get back to work. Well, we have the lowest infection rate in the country. I think it's time to get back to work. We got to show people we can do it safely. We're providing daycare and childcare, so if that's a mom or a dad that says, I can't afford to go to work because I got a kid, we've handled that. We're doing everything we can to get people back.
Yeah, I don't want to talk too much about COVID, but I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that your approval rating for COVID across party lines, independents, whatever, I think it's 85% positive approval in the handling of COVID. How do you look to leverage sort of that popularity, that sort of support for you to continue to hold the line in the state against new taxes, against oppressive mandates that make it hard to run a positive business here in Connecticut?
Well, on COVID, I can tell you that the state has done pretty well because of the wide variety of people we had working in the administration. Mm-hmm. We had real, not just healthcare advocates, but healthcare specialists who really focused, starting with Deirdre Gifford, who came out of Health and Human Services. Josh Jabal, who you mentioned, you maybe say, well, what does that have to do with it? He comes out of IBM, but he was a manager. And we had a management nightmare. I mean, there was no stockpile of masks or vents down in Washington. We had to scramble the globe to do that going forward. So your bigger question, though, was, okay, we've done well on COVID. How does that mean you're going to be able to manage the economy and help work with the legislature going forward? Right? We still have that dichotomy. The rich guys have got to pay more. We got to raise taxes. I got the other group that says one more dime and I'm moving to Delray. Okay, so I'm stuck in the middle of that twain. What I tried to convince everybody was, look, I come out of business. I'd love everybody to eliminate my tax. That'd be great. But I really want stability. Just tell me what this damn budget and government's going to look like this year and in 3 years, and let me plan accordingly. I don't need a herky-jerky, I'm going to eliminate the tax, I'm going to raise it 10%. And I think we provided stability. First governor in 40 years that didn't raise income, didn't raise sale, didn't do capital gains. Just give you a sense that you know what this state's going to look like in 3 and 5 years, and you can plan accordingly. And by the way, Joe Biden gave us a lot of money. So I tell the progressives, look, we had the biggest expansion of daycare and childcare and free community college in the history of the state. So we're being progressive. We're taking care of people. But the emphasis is on opportunity, not handouts.
Are we going to be able to sustain kind of the stability that you talked about after sort of the recovery money? I mean, I think Connecticut got $10 billion. That's a big influx. Are we going to be able to sustain this stability that you talked about beyond that?
First of all, yes. I can only look out a few years, but I do know that I've got the biggest rainy day fund in the history of the state. That represents about 15% of their budget. Everybody and their brother has other uses for the rainy day fund, but we've really focused. This is the time you want to do it, so that if we get hit, there will be that recession. I guarantee you, we don't have to cut services for folks most in need. And also, this money, Ari, allows us a little time to start this economy growing again. I just believe in growth. We haven't grown in 40 years. That was what hit us. Our costs are going like this, but our revenues are like that. That doesn't work. So we're growing now, not as fast as we should, but we're growing now. We got more GDP today than I had before COVID. Not as many people employed, but more GDP. So we've got a little bit of momentum. If we can keep that going, that solves a lot of problems.
Listen, a lot of people who listen to this podcast are going to be big believers in that sort of growth solves a lot of problems. And out of the private sector, I think we both know sales cures a lot of ills and covers up a lot of problems. And that's the same thing as sort of growing the economy. So on that front, we talked about sort of stronger together, that the private sector and public sector need to work together. So in that vein, for manufacturers and people in the private sector that listen to this show and will hear about this, what can we do to help keep things moving in the positive direction?
A, be positive on the state. B, all your fellow manufacturers elsewhere. Look, we got some big anchor tenants in this state, like EB and Pratt and Sikorsky and Pratt and Stanley, and they have supply chains all over the country. Well, a lot of them like to have another choice. A lot of them like to have more of their supply chain closer to home. I think during COVID, we sort of learned the importance of supply chains, the hard way. So I would, A, ask you to be a champion for state, the advantages of being here. Make sure they know that what we can do in terms of our manufacturing fund, and we can provide support in terms of buying advanced equipment. We can provide support in terms of training people to use that advanced equipment. We can put in place a pipeline so you get the people you need. That's what I want. I want to double the size of manufacturing over the next 10 years. Want to help me?
Yeah, absolutely want to help you. Double the size. That's a lofty goal. We very much like that. We've seen a lot of positives coming out of the pandemic. You mentioned it before. Job starts are up, I think, over 40,000 or 44,000 job starts in recent years. We've had, increasing number of people moving into the state, job growth. What is your administration going to do to keep that positive momentum?
First of all, there has been a turnaround. There really is strong positive momentum. Even last year, we had more jobs, business startups than we've had in ages. That sort of took me by surprise. Maybe they had more time to fill out the forms. Or more importantly, you don't have to fill out the forms anymore. It's all online. I think we build on our positive momentum, though. I show people we're holding the line on taxes. We're streamlining government. We're making it more efficient and a lot more responsive. You know, the other thing that frustrates the hell out of business is how long it takes to get a response from government. And time really is money. And we've sped that up a lot. We were at a major affordable housing facility in Hartford the other day, which is important. Housing is part of workforce. Housing is important. And the developer said something that sort of warmed my heart. He said, I met Lamont, a year and a half ago. He said, I'm probably going to get $1 million less than what I thought I really needed, but I'm going to get it twice as fast. And that's sort of the way we're working.
So to kind of on that vein then, what we hear time and time again from manufacturing leaders and frankly a lot of business leaders in Connecticut is the red tape in the state. Our ranking in CNBC, for whatever that's worth, went up quite a bit, right? We're finally back in the top half. I think we're ranked 24 out of 50, so up from 34 and climbing the charts, which we like to see. But what can you do? What can Josh do at DAS? What can other people do to sort of help get rid of some of this oppressive burden that just makes people feel bad and probably doesn't add a lot of value to the state or to them?
So there's two types of red tape. A lot of it is technology related. You would not believe how manual state government is. I really felt like I'd turned the clock back. And you walk around acres of offices, there's nothing but a file cabinets and people running and looking for a piece of paper. So Josh in particular, coming out of IBM, is really taking the lead on that streamlining. Like I talked about, CT Biz, you just go right to the site, one stop. That's how you can get all the preliminary information you need to get your business registered. Really working it deep. That's Department of Environment and Energy. Look, they may be strict on environmental rules and regs, but you can be strict in 60 days or you can be strict in 3 years. So be strict in 60 days and give people an idea. We sped that up a lot. Thank you. Yeah, CNBC has recognized that. We have a way to go, but that's incredible progress. And the other piece of regulation is just tons of regulation that comes out of the legislature. And, everybody has their cause. And I go back and forth with the legislature to say, look, this is well-meaning, but the commissioner can do that, hold the commissioner accountable. Do I need 2 new commissions to oversee what the commissioner is doing? Because each of those adds a month to the process.
And so are we going to be able to sort of fight that? And can we look forward to reduce, what you talked about improving the speed? I mean, is that a reality? CT Biz, great start. Manufacturers, though, Governor, they spend a lot of time dealing with these regulations because they got targets on their back when it comes from deep. They're always looking to expand facilities. So, you grow to the limits of your building, you want to add some more to the building. And it feels like, you just hear about all these challenges of just getting permits and getting these buildings built, not all of which is the state, some of it's town. But can we look to you to help us make that streamline better so the businesses that want to grow and add work here don't get frustrated by the challenges of getting the new equipment and expanding their footprint?
His name is Colin Cooper. He's your advocate. He is there. I mean, not only does he have the pathway to deep or pathway to even that local mayor who you said maybe has a P&Z thing and is slowing things down. I can't promise you a yes, but I can promise you an answer a lot faster and a strong advocate who knows how important it is that we get to yes.
Yeah, and keep going back to the advocate, so important. So on that point, I have one more question on this, but on that point, can we count on you to support continuing the chief manufacturing position into the future?
As long as I'm around, you can count on it.
That's what I'm talking about. So you talked about some ideas. You talked about places where we get support from the government, and there's a lot of it. There's no question. You look at, say, grants for Industry 4.0. UConn's got stuff. Constep's got stuff. Central's got some stuff. CCAT's got some stuff. And DCD has other programs. There's the Manufacturing Innovation Fund. So there is a lot of support out there for which manufacturers are absolutely grateful. One of the challenges is, and you know this when you're running a business, you got a lot on your plate. You got HR issues, you got sales issues, you got delivery issues. And so when you go to get the help, sometimes it feels daunting. You don't know who to go to. You don't know which ones you qualify for. It's confusing. Is there something that can be done to help manufacturing leaders understand how to take advantage of the support the government's offering right now?
Well, A, that's why we have a manufacturing czar, and B, talk about the private sector. I got David Lamont, who comes out of finance, steeped in private sector, understands business, understands the need to get those answers, and he has streamlined that up process. You contact DECD, one advocate there will get you in contact with all the different type of programs you need. In the old days, you had to go to each and every one of those departments on bended knee.
But now we're trying to streamlining that.
I know. I was one of those guys on bended knee.
No doubt about it. You talked about the rainy day fund and that it's at the statutory maximum. Well, I'm calling it the statutory maximum, but you said it was extremely high, which it is. How do you see us addressing using that where it is to help address some of the long-term fiscal challenges the state has? I mean, it's not lost on the business community that with all these long-term liabilities that lay out there relative to retirees who have long since retired but are costing us some money, I'm sure that's hot on your agenda, on your mind frequently. What can we look for in the state to help pay down some of that long-term liability, to help us get some more certainty that you talked about in the future?
That's a problem. We do have cement overshoes there. We do have $40 billion plus in outstanding liabilities that are racked up by Republicans and Democrats over the last 40 plus years. All right, that's the problem. Now, what do we do about it?
Yes, sir.
Number one, everybody I have hired and even hired over the last 5 years, defined contribution and benefit, much higher co-pays. They're called Tier 4 employees. So for this generation of state employees, we've had things in a pretty good balance. In fact, I've told the union guys, if I had my choice in anything, I'd pay these folks, these young people I got to recruit, often need IT skills and engineering skills. I'd pay them more during their early years, but I can't, afford to pay your pension and retire at 55 for the rest of your life. I mean, that would be the trade-off I would make. So we're moving that way, but that doesn't solve the problem because I still have an awful lot of guys who are retired or about to retire, and they're going to cost a lot of money. One thing we have done, and you mentioned the rainy day fund, is for the first time in the history of the state, we're reducing the pension obligation. All my predecessors, like a mortgage, they kept adding on another layer and adding on costs for future generations. We're going to take about $1.5 billion off. That $1.5 billion is going to save future governors and future taxpayers $130 million a year in pension payments we don't have to make. I wish I could say, boy, this is the start of something amazing. It's $1.5 billion out of $40 billion, so I got a way to go. But it's directional, and these good times aren't going to last forever, but it's a start.
Are we going to keep doing that? I mean, we've been really fortunate in the state that the stock market's remained, high, and growing. The demand for our manufacturing products, whether it's submarines, jet engines, helicopters you talked about, have remained strong. Big time medical device manufacturing here in Connecticut, which is also remaining strong. So can we count on you that if the good times do continue for as long as they do, that we're going to continue to make payments against that $40 billion outstanding liability?
Yeah, no, absolutely. A, it's my commitment. B, it's the law. Good for them. The legislature put it in place, and they tried to nick away at it a bit. But, our income streams are incredibly volatile. This may be more than you need, but
no, please.
It's not just salary. It's obviously cap gains, a lot of rich folks. So one day we're saying, yippee, happy days are here again. And the next day we're saying, oh, my God, we're going bankrupt, and the state can't manage its way out of a paper bag. So I think the rainy day fund is really prudent. It allows us to smooth things out. If we had a heck of a recession, we'd be in trouble. But if we have a normal, moderate recession, we're in good shape. We'll not have to raise taxes.
And that's really positive. And I know we talked about it earlier, so I just want to maybe bring it back for a second, which is, we've had in-migration, to the state. Most people don't know that our biggest out-migration state, I think, was New York. Probably a lot of people going to the city. Massachusetts has taken some people from us over time, going to college and maybe staying there. And now we've gotten some of those people back. Some of the businesses are back. I know you've been involved in some major announcements of companies that have come to Connecticut. How can we keep that momentum? Because, the COVID, people think this COVID concept's going to last forever, but I think they forget people tend to have pretty short-term memories. So, once the vaccine really takes hold, you already mentioned, we're doing great. I think 80+%, fully vaccinated. So at some point, people are going to start forgetting about that. What are we going to do to keep those people here and continue to attract and retain
So a couple
people?
things. One, my advice to your listeners is Connecticut attracts the best and the brightest from around the world. They come to our amazing university system and even some of the other schools. Get in front of them while they're here. Tell them that it's not like your grandparents' manufacturing. This is what manufacturing is today, and it's computer programming, and it's clean, and it's very highly paid with really good benefits. And we'll forgive your student loan if you stay here in the state of Connecticut. You're right. Once they go to San Francisco or Boston, it's a little tougher to get them back. When they're here, it's a lot easier to keep them here. And the flip side of the coin is we've tripled the amount of exposure we're giving to the state around the country to do a better job of re-impressing businesses why Connecticut's special.
I think that's really important, Governor. One of the things I've seen in the past is when recessions hit or hard times hit, it's the Convention and Visitors Bureau advertising budget that immediately gets slashed 50%, 80%, 90%. I think you can appreciate, people in the private sector look at that and go, my gosh, when bad things are happening, you can't cut back sales and marketing because reducing sales and marketing isn't going to spur growth. Are we going to see more of that? Continue to tout the positives here and attract people?
Yeah, as long as I'm here, you're absolutely right. It's like the farmer; he can't sell enough chickens, so he cuts back on feed corn. Well, that was what we did here. We cut our tourism and advertising budget by 3/4, and boom. So we've done the opposite. Obviously, we've taken a lot of money. We got $15 million, which may not sound like a lot, but it's 3 or 4 times more than we had before. Some of that is tourism, which is a big industry. But tourism is bigger than that. It's about the Connecticut lifestyle, what people see here. And a lot of people move into the state, especially during and post-COVID. They like a little backyard. They like suburban living. They like small towns. If this happens again, Connecticut's a place to be. And also we kept our schools open. Yeah. That was invaluable compared to our peers. And by the way, kept manufacturing open.
We hadn't really got to that, but huge. And again, that's, I think, ties back to having the voice of manufacturing in the state and listen to it. And we certainly appreciate, on behalf of manufacturers, appreciate your understanding about the importance of supply chain and keeping those open, which I think is critically important. So I also wanted to ask you about the cities. You've talked about attracting people here, and I think one of the challenges we have with some of the young folks is suburban living isn't as exciting when you're 22 and 25 and 30 years old. It gets more exciting once you have a couple of kids and you want a yard to put them in. What is the state going to do to get back to sort of supporting our cities, to helping them be more vibrant so people want to hang out there and be cultural centers that are fun, that have a nightlife, that have a 24/7 vibe? I mean, look, Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven, they're not going to be Manhattan. We shouldn't try and be Manhattan, but we can be better than what we are.
Well, Stanford is booming. With a lot of young people. Yep. And maybe take that train into the city once a week, not 5 days a week, and great outdoor nightlife. One of the silver linings to COVID is eating outdoors. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, these sleepy towns had people in the street, and people enjoyed it. New Haven is growing and growing strong right now, big wins. Bridgeport, surprisingly, has added a lot of now housing for young people. Hartford, we got to get the people back, the workers back in the buildings, so we have some work, life on there. We have great small towns, and you're right. We were out of favor. All the cool kids were in the West Village up until 3 years ago. I think they're discovering the value of some of our small towns as long as we keep them fun, energetic, and lively. And our restaurants are a running head start there.
So are we going to be able to keep that, you think? I mean, we've noticed the alfresco dining has exploded across the state. You think that's going to remain post-COVID?
Oh, the alfresco dinings, we made that permanent. I just think it's invaluable. In terms of young people, look, New York City's filling up again now too. We thought, oh my God, another quarantine. Who heck wants to be at a 500 square foot apartment? But
it happens.
I got 2 kids in the Lower West Side, and one's moving to Connecticut, so I'm making progress.
Listen, one life at a time. One life at a time. One last thing before I think we start kind of moving to some more softer, kinder stuff is I just want to kind of talk a lot about transportation. Connecticut struggles with being able to get from A to B. And I want you to sort of opine on 2 parts of it. Some of it's just like, if I've got an office in, Danbury, Newtown area, and another office in Hartford, trying to get through 84, through Waterbury, around all that, on a day can take you, an hour and a half, when it should be, 30 minutes. We struggle to kind of get places. I'm sure about the train challenges to get to New York City in and out. That's a problem. What is the state doing to address that transportation challenge?
Well, as you know, it's been sort of an uphill climb for me. But you mentioned 84. I mean, a few years ago under Dan Malloy, they put in place a couple of choke points where they added some lanes and took about 15 minutes off of each commute in both directions. Up and down 91, 95. I don't need another lane everywhere, but these choke points, I can make a difference. Rail, I can take 10 minutes off that commute, I think, within a year just by some signalization and tracks. Then I got to do bridges. I got these 90-year-old bridges. Every time you slow to crawl over the bridge, each of those bridges I repair, I can take 5 minutes off your commute. But then you got to pay for it. So I've had a lot of options on how to pay for it. Everybody generally stands to me next to that bridge and says, let's fix it, but I don't want to pay for it that way. The good news is that gas prices are back up. That's good news only in this sense. Our transportation fund is solvent. Joe Biden and Congress, if they can pass that infrastructure bill, that will mean about $1 billion a year additional. That will really allow me to speed up road and rail, make it safer along the way. And I did get a small fee on the big tractor-trailer trucks that go through the state, so I'll be able to pay for our incremental share. I don't get the money for free. I got to put up like 20%. So we didn't get everything we wanted, but I think you're going to see real improvement in transportation over the next 5 years.
And one of our sayings here, Governor, is progress over perfection. Can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Exactly.
So I think progress is important, and good to know that you're going to keep the fight going on transportation. It is absolutely crucial in this state that we improve our transportation. And related to that, and this ties in directly.
Tell your legislators that, will you? Just say how important it is for us to be able to get our supply, us for our warehouse, us for our customers, and by the way, how are you going to pay for it?
All right, there you go. We heard it from the governor, so we'll get on that. The other piece I want to ask you about is how can we have all these jobs in manufacturing, and there's a lot of people that live in our cities that could fill those jobs, but it's hard to get there, right? So many manufacturers moved out to the burbs and these industrial parks. I know you talked to Jim Lurie. I'm sure you're hearing about what Stanley's trying to do in Parkville, but what can we do to get the people that live in Hartford and Bridgeport and New Haven, help them get to the jobs? Because it seems in some ways, in manufacturing in particular, there's just literal geographic gulf of transportation challenges to get people to the jobs.
And we're really trying to turn those kids, especially those young people in the cities, onto the, you mentioned Laurie and Stanley Black & Decker, the manufacturing, to show people what it is, train them in those cities. Got the same thing down at Gateway in New Haven, working there, and then they have to be able to get there. And often they're coming up with shuttle buses, make it easier for people. I'm working on expanding bus service to get people in and out. We had free bus service on weekends this whole summer for the first time. That was less about getting to work than showing a city kid how to get out to a beach, but it was a way of bringing our state together.
Yeah, I think that's just really important. And I would urge you with whatever you guys can do in government to think about that, because the transportation systems, the bus tracks, were really designed to get people into the downtowns. But if the jobs aren't there that need to be filled, it's very difficult to get somebody, that say lives off of Albany Avenue out to Windsor to get a job and get home, on a bus or public transportation. I think that could go a long way to filling these jobs, because I'm sure you've seen the numbers. It sounds like you're a numbers guy, which I appreciate, that there's lots of jobs out there to be filled, high-paying jobs, and people looking for them. We have to find a way to get those two together to fill that. Does that make sense?
That makes all the sense in the world.
I'm going to switch to a couple little softer questions, I think, that were on my mind.
And you can locate a few more businesses downtown, too. That would answer some of those questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or next to that rail station.
There you go. Good point on that. So
soft ones, good. I want that.
I'm curious. Why don't you use your given first name?
Who, Edward?
Yeah. Why do you go by Ned?
Oh, that's a mouthful. Nobody's ever called me Edward. I mean, I don't know. That was the guy in the office. Who was he? Oh, he was in Pretty Woman. No, I'm not Edward. I'm Ned.
You're Ned. That's it. From the beginning, you've been Ned forever?
Yeah.
Oh, very nice. And I don't know if the listeners know, but there's a connection between you and MTV. And I wonder if you would tell the story about MTV and your first gig with University.
Oh, how'd you know about that? So I was wiring up master plan developments, and it was sort of boring. And then I got a call from Franklin Pierce College in Ridge, New Hampshire. I was a cable guy. And they, you had Keith Richards, the early days of MTV, and he going, I want my MTV. And, there was a university in New Hampshire, and the cable operator wasn't providing it for one reason or another. So I, drove up there to Ridge, New Hampshire, and said, look, I can customize the system for you. We can have educational program, we can have international program, and we can have MTV. So you're right, MTV opened that first door for us, and we took that concept to about 499 other campuses.
It's pretty impressive, including, I think, some campuses in Connecticut, UHart and Yale, certainly among them,
Yeah.
UConn as well. Just great. I think that's a great story for business leaders to hear, right? You get an opportunity, you take it, and then ran with it. So I think that's pretty cool.
If it works, can you replicate it and then replicate it fast? I mean, I just wish I had raised money and moved even faster than I did. I was bootstrapping there in those early years.
Yeah, well, listen, lots of us business owners look back and wish we poured some more money, gasoline on the fire earlier, but we got where we got to. Another interesting question. I know you're living in the governor's mansion now. That's got a long and storied history, including, by the way, the fact that it was donated or sold to the state maybe by a manufacturer, Capewell, right here in Hartford. So some connections there. What's one of the most interesting things you've found from being in the governor's mansion and the history that's there that's kind of caught your eye or interested you?
Well, first of all, we're in a period of fiscal discipline, so we call it the governor's residence, not the mansion.
Okay.
I was sort of intrigued that the guy that built it was gorgeous and big even for its day back in 1908. He didn't even make the horseshoes. He made the nails for the horseshoes, to give you an idea of how precise it was. But then you can imagine 10 years later, horseshoes and horseshoe nails weren't selling, so he went south, and the poor old residence sat empty for a long time. And then the state picked it up. I just love the history of the place. Everybody comes in. This is where Lowell Weicker used to lie on the couch and hold court, and this is where Nikki Haley used to serve lunch for all the troopers because they were her best friends. Just those little ways that bring the place to life. We couldn't do the Christmas party this past year because of COVID, so we did a video. And I just walked through and told the stories of every room the day that the chandelier dropped on Daniel Inouye's head, right when we were trying to get him to do more defense.
Right.
There's a lot of history in that building, and I really take it seriously.
Yeah, is it sort of fun to be part of that? I mean, the 89th governor of Connecticut, sort of walking in a path that's been laid out before. What does it feel like?
I think about that. I got, Jody Rell came for dinner a year or two ago. I'm trying to get folks back in there. You feel like there's a really good tradition. You want to do your best to hold up your side of the bargain.
Is it hard being in between so many things? Like, you talked about going to a bridge, and everyone agrees we want to get the bridge fixed, but no one agrees on how we pay for it. And it just makes everything so difficult. You want, the legislator wants to do this, business wants to do that. What's it like sort of being in the middle of that, and how do you sort of thread that needle and stay sane at the same time?
Give me your alternative. Just don't say no. My door's open, big table. I got a lot of ideas. I don't have all the ideas. If you don't like how I want to do this, how would you do it? But I don't need people sitting on the sideline throwing spitballs just saying no. I mean, that's what drives me crazy. So come on in. I'm happy to go. And I think we changed the tone in that building. I work really well with Democrats and Republicans. Work really good with the guys come out of business because we sort of speak the same language a little bit. You want to know? Here's what I tell you. Run for the legislature, will you? We're long on lawyers. I love lawyers. They're fine. But we don't have many people who have had to actually balance the books at the end of the month. And that perspective would be really helpful.
Yeah, well, amen to that. So on that note, I'm going to switch to a rapid fire round of questions that we always end our shows with. You ready? All right. Hopefully they won't be too controversial. It's going to be a this or that. So here we go. Red Sox or Yankees?
Yankees.
Oh, well, we have to disagree on something.
Everybody's shaking their head in this room. How'd I do on that?
Well, listen, you came up to the wrong part of the state to say Yankees, but we'll let it slide. Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Dunkin'.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Prefer a sports car or SUV?
Well, I'm not even allowed to drive, so and all I do is sit around in an SUV. But so I really miss a sports car.
When you take time off, COVID out of the thing, you a staycation guy or more exotic destination?
Certainly for the last 3.5 years, I've been a big staycation guy. But in my previous life, I love to explore, and I love to go to places where Middle East and Kampala and Africa and places where you really broaden your perspective on the world.
Yeah, and always nice to travel and then come home again. Do you have a favorite business book?
Not so much. I mean, Good to Be Great and a lot of those books back in the 70s and 80s were going to break the glass, but I didn't find them all that relevant to my life.
Oh, very interesting. If you could do something, you had to do something other than be the governor of Connecticut, and it could literally be anything in the whole wide world, what would you do?
Teach history. I did a little teaching in my day, and I love history, and it's so irrelevant to kids. See if you can make it relevant, make it real for folks, and make it real not just for white kids and tell them about the Pilgrims, make it real for the incredible diversity of what makes Connecticut so unique. I'd love the chance to do that.
Oh, look at that. What's something that you learned early in your career or early in your life, Governor, that you think's helped propel you to all the success that you've had?
Know what you know and know what you don't know, and then get the best people around you. And early in my career, I was a sociology major building telecommunications system. I could barely spell the difference between fiber and coax, but I had really good people, and I could explain what those smart people were telling me to a layman at a university. And now, 40 years later, I had the best epidemiologists in the world trying to explain to me what the hell is going on with COVID and what can we expect. And just like those engineers I had to translate, these epidemiologists, I tried to translate that for the people of Connecticut, what we were doing, why we were doing it. Will you follow me on it?
I know this is supposed to be rapid fire. I don't usually do follow-ups, but I'm really interested in this topic. So one follow-up and then one final question. A lot of people say that, right? They say, get smarter people around me. But then you sort of have to humble yourself to be able to listen to them. How do you think about that? And what could you share with the audience for business leaders who understand the concept but don't know how to do it? Like, how do you find those people and then listen to them? Like, how do you humble yourself to realize where you're great and where you need support?
People tell me all the time where I need support, so that's not so tough. I don't know. My life has been pretty good. I don't have a chip on my shoulder. There's plenty of credit to go around. And the more you share the credit, the more people will come back to you and work with you the next time.
I love that. So last rapid fire question here. What's something that you learned later in your life or later in your career, Governor, that if you could go back and tell young Ned, and if he'd listen to you, you think would have a hugely positive impact on his life?
Wow. I generally, in most of my life, didn't follow the straight and true, started up a newspaper, started up a company, did things that took a little bit of risk. I never wanted to be that guy that looked back, go to the nursing homes or, and I wish I had done this, I wish I had done that. They always regret the things they didn't do. They never regret the things they did. Even if they failed, they don't regret having tried. I feel happy that generally I've tried, haven't always succeeded, but I've always been out there trying.
Give him shots. I really appreciate that, Governor. Thank you so much for coming on. Manufacturing is a big part of Connecticut's history. It's a huge part of the Connecticut future. Your support is really appreciated. We're here to get in the fight with you and continue to drive the state in a positive direction.
And tell those friends of yours who are manufacturing in Akron, come take a look at Connecticut. It's worth a look.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by IT Direct, a Compass MSP company.
As always, thank you so much for tuning in and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a community where we can learn and grow together. Your input, feedback, and engagement is critical to making that happen. Please do comment, like, and subscribe so more and more people can hear what we're doing and join our community of growth and success. Thanks so much for tuning in. Talk to you again soon.